What's going on, everybody? So here we are. I'm back home. Things are starting to go back to normal. A lot of text back and forth with a lot of friends. We got home safely, great hanging out, all of the sharing of memories. That's been really, really fun. I wanted to do a full recap video for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to have all of my pickups in one place. Now, if you watched my day one video, you saw my I guess not my big, one of my big pickups, the Ernie Banks rookie card. And I'm going to give you a better look at that here in just a second. And then on day two, as I showed in that video, I picked up a Roger Peckinpah card and I picked up a Walter Johnson. We'll take a look at those in just a second also. And then on day three, I ended up not buying anything. I looked and looked and looked, but I felt like I was kind of trying to force it and I didn't want to make a mistake. I've tried really hard to be, people talk about, oh man, this guy has a good eye. No, it's not that one guy has a good eye and another has a bad eye. It's that one guy's more patient than the other person. I think patience is the key, because if you can stay patient until the right card shows up, when the right card shows up, you'll know it and you'll make the purchase and you'll have a really nice copy. So that's kind of what I tried to do on day three. Now, on day three, the biggest addition to the collection was a gift from my friend Tony, which I'll show in just a second. But behind the scenes, I had several people bring me items. A lot of friends showed up and gave me things. And so I want to talk about that. I want to show those cards. And then I also want to talk about the other two big pickups that were part of my national budget, but not at the national. See, I got the question several times before the national, hey, what if a good deal shows up? What if a card shows up on eBay or in an auction house and you're like, nope, I'm not going to buy it because I want to save my money for the national? And I was like, if a good deal and a card you want presents itself, even if you're about to go to the national, you kind of should go for it. And that's exactly what happened. I picked up two cards and I teased one of them, the smaller of the two, in a previous video right before the national. I'm going to show you those two pickups as well. They weren't at the national, but they were with some of my national budget. So that's going to be shown. And then, last but not least, my dad, midlife dad, Coach Miller, I'm going to show you all of his pickups. So there's a lot to show that I've not yet shown everybody. As I take a step back and I kind of, regroup and talk about the pros and cons, I like the fact that Cleveland was one big room. Really, there was a curtain between, there were two rooms, there was a curtain between them to kind of separate them. One of the rooms had better Wi-Fi. I'm guessing that's where all the Wi-Fi connection was. The other room was much cooler. It had higher ceilings, and it was over the VIP area, which had tons of AC going. So I think a lot of that AC air was coming up to that side as well. So the main room was cooler. The other room, the auxiliary room, was warmer, but the internet was much better in there. The internet was an issue. It wasn't a major issue, but it was slow at times. The other problem with the show in Cleveland was the parking was pretty rough. And the reason that the parking was pretty rough is because everybody had to drive. See, at some of the other locations, you're able to stay within walking distance. Like in Chicago, you take a catwalk over the street and you're from most of the hotels, many of the hotels, and you're in the convention center. But in Cleveland, everybody has to drive in, and there's really only like one main road in from the highway, and it caused some issues for a lot of people. Now, I stayed in a location where we came up to the center, the IX center. It wasn't as big of a problem for us, so we didn't really experience a lot of that traffic except for leaving. But that was a thing for some people. I think the concept of Chicago First, Chicago is more centrally located for the entire United States. Everybody's going to travel some distance, but it's kind of more centrally located. I mean, West Coast, us West Coast people, that's a long flight to Cleveland. I know it's more convenient for all the East Coast people, but Chicago seems a little fairer. So I'm looking forward to going to a national in Chicago where I can stay across the street, not have to worry about parking, not have to rent a car and have that extra expense, but also be a little bit closer. But as a whole, I thought they did a pretty good job, to be honest with you. There were some times where, some people were frustrated and there were some long lines and stuff, but I personally wasn't really that affected and didn't notice a lot of people were complaining about. I waited in line for 30 minutes for my VIP badge and all that kind of stuff, but nothing crazy. So with all that said, let's go ahead and start by first looking at my day 1, my day 2 pickups, and my gift on day 3. Let's look at those first. You've seen them, but let's just do a quick recap of those.
All right, so as a quick reminder, my big pickups are on Wednesday, the 1954 Topps Ernie Banks rookie card, which I'm in love with. And here it is in all its glory. On the back, there's usually so much chipping around the green edges and borders. This thing is so clean, so well centered, such great color. How it's a 5, I don't know, but it worked out perfectly for me. So there is the card that will not leave my side until my days cease to exist. The color on his cap tied in with his name and the PSA flip is just why I thought PSA was the perfect holder for it. And here it is. Again, that Cubs logo in the top right-hand corner. The centering, top, bottom, left, and right is fantastic. And then my second pickup of the show was this M1014 Roger Peckinpah. Again, as a Yankee captain collector. This thing is fantastic. It is a blank back. And I love it how it's one of his cards as a Yankee. It's a PSA 5. The centering is phenomenal for a card that's over 100 years old, almost 110 years old. Thrilled with that purchase. Again, this I paid $125 for. The Banks was $1,600. So 2 big pickups here, and here's a quick look at the Peckinpah. Again, the condition on it is just really good for what it is. That is a nice addition. And then the last pickup of Thursday night is this T206 Sweet Cap Walter Johnson in an SGC3. He has 2 cards in this set. He's got the Hands at Chest, which is this one. And he's got a portrait. This is my preferred of the 2. This is the Walter Johnson from the set that I was targeting. The color on it is phenomenal. The color on the back really popped. A lot of the times these are kind of faded on the back, but this one is bright red, and it's well centered on the back as well. I searched and searched and searched, and I paid a little over comp, but you know what? That is fine with me because I think it's well over the grade of a 3 in my eyes. So that was the third pickup of the show. And here it is in all its glory. There's a little bit of staining on it. But man, for what I'm looking for, this was a best case scenario. And then on my third day, Friday, I didn't buy a card, but I got an amazing gift from Tony. And this was a pirate card that I was showing in my video from Wednesday, and I mentioned that I didn't have it. Well, Tony snuck over and bought it for me and then gave it to me. Insanely thoughtful. I can't tell you how many people I mentioned how thoughtful that was. He's such a great guy. We spoke on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and I know that we will be speaking more into the future. The color on this card, the condition of this card, front and back, is absolutely phenomenal. I think I have 22 or 23 of the 50 cards from this N19 Pirates of the Spanish Main set. Such a cool card. Absolutely love it.
So those were my big pickups at the show. Again, the Banks, the Walter Johnson, the Roger Peckinpah, and then the awesome pirate card gift from my friend. Now, in addition to those, though, I had some gifts, and some of the gifts were fairly significant. So let me now take a second to show you some of the items that were gifted to me from a variety of folks. A few are viewers of the channel. Most were friends that I've made through YouTube. But let's take a look at those here.
So a fun tradition is many people making their own cards. There is Jake from Legends Never Die. This cool Ricky card with Eddie's Cardboard Chaos. Picked up several of these. Super fun. Wade Boggs fan. Autographed even. How about that? And then I got one from my guy, Rocket Rick. Beautiful card there. This one was Tanny Koufax. That is a card of Darren's dad. Very cool that his brother made. How about Sammy Thunder with the lightning bolt with the purple pen? Love that thing. Thank you, Sammy. Sammy gave me this gift as well. This was really thoughtful of him. Sam McDowell. Very cool knowing I am a Northern California guy. And then Iconic Owl gave me one of his T205s numbered there. That was cool. And he gave me a couple of gifts. He gave me this sweet Clemens card. I don't think I have this one. So whenever I add a new Clemens card, that is awesome. So that was very generous. And then he gave me this. This is a Roger Peckinpah blanket card. You may have seen these before. He was at a local card shop in Denver and found that, which was super thoughtful. And then Josh from Rated Rookie gave this to me at the YouTube get-together. That was super sweet of him. Dylan, riding through the tube there. He gave me a sticker. And then, perfect Dylan fashion, a coaster. But then Dylan also brought me this gift. It's an Aaron Judge card from the 62 year, number 62. And perfect centering of 100 with a Dylan D, double D slab, numbered out of 2023, a gold, to go into my Yankee captain run to fill the Aaron Judge slot. My guy, John Mangini, with a really generous gift of this absolutely gorgeous Walter Hagen card. He knows I'm a golf card collector. The eye appeal on this card is off the charts. Super, super thoughtful of him to think of me and bring this for me. Chris from Missouri brought me a card. He said, hey, I'm the guy from Kansas City, so I'm bringing you the card from the guy from Kansas City. This is a gorgeous card and a PSA 7, 1977 George Brett card. And then Dave. Dave was the guy with the amazing collection that I featured. He brought me a gift, too. He let me see his cards, his amazing cards. And he brought me this Stan Musial stamp card. So generous. And then Stephen with a PH. Our friend from north of the border, he brought me a couple of O-Peachy Nettles cards. This one is a 79 O-Peachy. And another one is a Yankee here. Gorgeous cards that are going to go awesome into my Greg Nettles collection. Absolutely thrilled with all of those. And then, check this out. My friend Maple, he came into town and we hung out. He bought me a year membership to the Baseball Hall of Fame with my own membership card. This cool button, and there's a couple of pins in here. Part of it includes a magazine that comes out every other month. What a cool and thoughtful gift from Maple.
So those were some super generous gifts. Really, really generous items from quite a few people. So thank you to all of you. Now, one of the things I don't want to do here is I don't want to start singling anybody out. I don't want to start mentioning a ton of names of, it was good to see my friends like this person, because then I will inevitably leave somebody out. Just like if I talk about the names of some of the viewers that I met, I will leave people out. So, listen, if we met, if we spoke, if we talked, we both know it. And I appreciate all of the conversation, all of the kind words, all of the camaraderie together, and the friendships and all of that. You know who you are. So thank you for that. Now, one of the things I've been teasing is my big pickup or pickups in addition to the cards that I bought at the show. So about 5 days or so before the show, maybe a week before the show, some cards hit eBay that I really, really was interested in. And as much as I tried to talk myself out of it, and as little as I've bought over the last couple of months, I could not resist these two cards. Now, one of them I showed a picture of earlier, and it is a 1915 Cracker Jack of Armando Marsans. Now, if you've heard that name or that name rings a bell, my friend Orlando has talked a lot about him. And I've learned a lot about a lot of the Cuban players from early on. And that's where Armando Marsans comes in. He's one of the groundbreaking Cuban players that helped open the door to a lot of more Cuban players coming to the United States and being a big part of even all of Latin America participating in Major League Baseball, which is awesome. And so I picked up that card, which I showed a picture of, and we'll take a look at it here. And then there was another card as well, which is also a 1915 Cracker Jack, and it's a Hall of Famer. And if you would have told me a year ago that I would have a 1914 or 1915 Cracker Jack card of any Hall of Famer, it would have blown my mind. But if you would have told me that I would have had it of a pitcher who is an all-time great pitcher and to this day holds the career ERA title. He has the lowest career ERA of any player and is in the Hall of Fame. I am absolutely thrilled with this purchase. Let's take a look at the other two cards, which showed up while I was gone on the trip. And when I returned, I had a mail day to open these cards. Check it out.
So when I got home, mail had arrived. And this is a 1915 Cracker Jack Armando Marsans. Now, having any Cracker Jack card has long been a hope and a goal. This thing is absolutely stunning. You know they're the 1915s because the back is upside down so that they would go into an album that they had that year. And this thing is just, it's gorgeous. Again, one of the important players to come from Cuba and start that process of Cuban players coming over and contributing and being major importance in Major League Baseball. So this one I teased out with a picture before, but this second one is a big one. It's a Hall of Famer. It's Ed Walsh, a 1915 Crackerjack Ed Walsh. He was a dominating pitcher, had 40 wins, multiple times in the 30s for wins and 20s. And the depth of the color on these and the clarity on these. This one took longer to arrive because it went through the eBay authenticity program. But it's so sharp. I don't know how it's only a 3. It's off center, but I mean, this is a card from the Crackerjack set. Look at those two beauties. So 2 big pickups as part of my national budget that were picked up actually before the national.
Seriously, completely blown away to have those cards. To me, there are very, very few cards, very few sets that I think are more beautiful than the 1914 and 15 Crackerjack cards. Now, the 1914 Crackerjack cards all came in boxes of Crackerjack and have lots of caramel staining and sugar staining on them. The 15, some came in the boxes, but some also were mail away. So it's a little bit easier to find the 1915 in good condition than the 1914. But those cards were extraordinarily sharp, and the depth of the red and the color in them was incredible. I could not pass them up. So I used about 20% of my budget for the National on those cards before I even left, which was hard for me to do, but it was an opportunity and a price point I just felt was too good. The Marsands I paid $220 for. I would have paid $220 for a common of an irrelevant player. But an important player, to have a Crackerjack that looks like that in a PSA 2, I was not going to pass that up. The Ed Walsh, big Ed Walsh. Again, this guy won 40 games in a season one time. 40 games. He had a whole bunch of, during a period of time, he was extremely dominant and to this day holds the career ERA lead. He has the lowest ERA ever for his career. And I have his Crackerjack card, and that card is super sharp, and the red on it, no creasing. It's insane to have that card. And I'm absolutely thrilled to have it. Now, the asking price on that was $1,000, which I thought was more than fair. But, of course, they're going to try to get a deal. So we kind of negotiated back and forth, and I ended up getting the card at a best offer price of $900. $900 for a PSA 3 of a Crackerjack card, of a Hall of Famer, of an important pitcher. Now, I saw that same card in a PSA 3 holder 2 or 3 times at the National. And none of them looked nearly as good as the one that I got. And all of them had an asking price over $2,000. They were all between about $2,100 and $2,800. I think I saw 3 of them in that range. And I bought that for $900, and it looks light years better than any of the ones that I saw. I'm thrilled to pick those up. So to review, with my national budget, I got the Peck and Paw, I got the Banks, I got the Walter Johnson, I got the Armando Marsands Crackerjack, and I got the Ed Walsh Crackerjack. 5 cards with my budget, and I'm over the moon. It could not have gone better, if you ask me. I went in thinking, because I had about 30 cards on my list and I put them in tiers. It was tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And my goal was one tier 1 card and a tier 2 or a tier 3. That was my hope. I was going for the big card and then a medium card. And the first card on my list that I was looking for and I was hoping for was the T206 Ty Cobb Red Portrait. And my first night, I spent the first 2 hours kind of zipping through the tables looking for one in about a 2 grade that had the eye appeal that I wanted. And it wasn't happening. It just wasn't happening. I looked and looked and looked. So then I started to pivot. I started to go to the next couple of cards on my list. And the next 2 on my list of the top tier were a Cy Young portrait with the green background and the Walter Johnson action shot with his hands at chest, the one that I bought. Those were the next 2 cards. So then I started kind of focusing my eyes on those 2 cards. And that's when the first night, toward the end of the night, the whole Ernie Banks thing happened. And that card just fell in my lap. I went home thrilled, but also saying, now what's going to happen? I knew that I had bought the Marsands at home. I knew that I had bought the Ed Walsh at home. I now had my Grail card of the Ernie Banks. And it was making it where I probably now wasn't going to be able to afford the Cy Young either. So now my focus kind of went to the Walter Johnson. And when I went to my focus on the Walter Johnson, what I was hoping would happen is I would find one quickly. And I just wasn't. I was finding them. They just didn't have the eye appeal that I wanted. So on day 2, I went through the whole show 2 times. I circled through as best I could stay focused because there was a lot going on. But I went through it twice and I didn't see one. And I was kind of getting frustrated. I was like, man, I'm not finding Walter Johnson now. So now what am I going to do? At that point, I remembered behind the PSA booth, right when you walked in on the right was the PSA booth. Behind it was about 10 tables. And the only time I had gone over there was on night 1 when I was looking for a Cobb. And I didn't really remember what those tables had. So I said, oh yeah, I forgot about that area. So I'd made 2 laps through the whole room, excluding this little area that had about maybe 10 dealers. So I went through that little area and the last table back there had the dealer that I featured, Andy, who had amazing T206 cards. And he actually had 3 or 4 cards I really wanted. And I decided he had 2 Walter Johnsons that I really liked. One was in a PSA 3 and one was in the SGC 3. Now, when I put the 2 side by side, I kept going back and forth between the 2. He kept saying, the SGC one's way better, man. There's no doubt about it. He goes, get whatever you want. So what I did was I ended up deciding, because at the last minute I noticed that the PSA 3, there was a print flaw with a color on it. There was a big print mark of blue where there shouldn't have been. And that kind of sealed the deal that I'm going with the SGC. Mostly the depth of the blue in that Walter Johnson and the centering was outstanding. The eye appeal on it is off the charts. So then I started to negotiate. He was asking $3,000 for the card. And I felt like it comps at about $2,350. And he was asking $3,000. So I just said to him flat out, I said, I really want the card. It's a beautiful card. But we might be too far apart. And he said, well, just make an offer. Tell me what, you're not going to hurt my feelings. And I said, I don't mind paying a little above comp because I do try to buy the card, not the grade. And this is a 3, but I think it's a strong 3. But 3,000 is too high. I think 2,500 is a really fair offer. Again, I think that an average 3 comps at around 23.50. So I'm going above comp with my offer. Why would I do that? Because to me, that card is a stunning 3. It is a very high-end 3. The label might say 3, but to me, the card is more like a 4. So to pay high 3 prices for a card that I think looks like a 4, if we're actually going to buy the card and not the grade, then we kind of should base the price at least somewhat on the quality of the card and not just the grade. So I went in with the strong offer, and he goes, because I was hoping you'd say 27.50 and we would do the deal. He goes, I can do 26. So I checked my book, and what I had done is before the show, I had gone through and I had put comps for, of the 30 cards I wanted, all 30 cards in every grade and half grade that I was considering, I put the last 4 comps. So I checked my book and I said, I'm just going to be straight transparent with you. Here are the comps. And I opened my book and it had it all laid out. And I said, this is a 3. Let's look at the SGC 3s. And we went through the comps together. And I said, 2,500 is more than any of the last 4 comps. Now, granted, this one looks way better than any of the last 4 comps, but they're still 3s, SGC 3s. And I said, so I think 25 is really fair. And he kind of laughs and he goes, man, you came in prepared. You've got the comps. What you're saying makes total sense. You've got a deal. And we closed the deal at 2,500. I was thrilled. He was happy. We ended up talking a little bit, and I ended up telling him, hey, I'm going to, do my video tonight. Check it out. And I gave him my card. Came by the next morning. And I told him all that afterwards. I said, hey, so I have a YouTube channel, and I want to kind of talk about this deal. And some guy was standing next to me. He goes, he does have a YouTube channel. I seen it. It's cool. And we all started laughing. And I went by the next morning. And I said, hey, I posted the video. I talked about your channel or your booth and stuff. And he goes, I saw it. It was awesome. Like, that was so cool. It was a great deal, and absolutely, thrilled to have the card. The Roger Peckinpah, thrilled to have the Roger Peckinpah because I collect Yankee captains, and Roger Peckinpah doesn't have a ton of cards, and he only has a couple of cards as a Yankee. So buying this one where he's a Yankee is really, really cool. I was thrilled to put that in my collection. He was asking $150 for that. I mean, that card is over 100 years old, of a Yankee. It's centered, and it's a PSA 5. And he was asking $150, and I was going to pay $150. And I just said, what's your best? And he said, $125. And I said, deal. And here's $125. That was an easy deal. I was going to pay whatever the price was. Thrilled with it. Now, keep in mind, I'm there with my dad. Super special experience. And, as we get there and we're looking at cards together, he's making some purchases himself. So I want to show you what my dad picked up here.
All right. So first up, this beautiful 1958 Bobby Richardson. He's a big Bobby Richardson guy. And this is a beautiful card. It's in a PSA 6 holder. It's an older label, but it sure holds up. The color on it, the centering on it, the corners. It's a really, really nice example. So he picked that one up. And then he also picked up a 1957 Don Drysdale rookie card in a PSA 4. The fact that this card isn't more expensive makes zero sense to me. The back is a little off center, but who cares? 95% of the time we're looking at the front, and I think this was a great buy. He really killed it. We're just getting started with his pickup. So he also grabbed a 57 Topps Sandy Koufax in an SGC 4. a well-centered example and very sharp. When I see cards like this in a 4, I'm sometimes wonder, well, what does a 6 look like if this is only a 4? So he picked this one up, actually from my guy Tim Payne. He picked a couple of cards up from him. This is one of them. My dad has really taken a liking to the 57 top set recently, and 56. Here's a 1954 Ted Williams. Remember, Ted Williams has 2 cards in this set, card number 1 and card number 250, the first and last card. This is my preferred, the yellow one. It's got a little bit of discoloration on the back, and the front of it is just stunning. The color is vibrant. The card is sharp. It's a beautiful card. And I know that was a card on his to get list. And this was a big one on his list. This was one of the key targets. And he was open to whatever grade it took to get it. And he found one he really liked in a 3.5, and I get why. It's well-centered. It is pretty darn sharp. It's just a 3.5. So a 1956 Jackie Robinson. This is his first Jackie Robinson card, believe it or not. And it is beautiful. Look at the color on it. He was really, really excited for this one. He's been hunting this card for quite some time. So that is another great buy. And then the other card he bought from Tim Payne is this 57 tops Willie Mays. Now, you may have seen this one on my video. I was there with him when he bought this card. And again, my dad got heavy into the 56 set, bought a bunch of those cards. Now he's been working his way through some of the Hall of Famers in the 57 set. A really nice 5.5 of Willie Mays here. Again, centering good, corners good. I was like, yeah, I don't see why you wouldn't buy that one. And then the big one. Before we left, he's like, no, I'm not getting a 53 Mantle. It's too expensive. Well, look who came home with a 53 Mantle. This purchase actually came from our friend Pete, who made the ride with Mookie into town. And we were hanging out one day after the show, before the YouTube get-together, and Pete was saying, I brought some cards to trade or sell. We start looking through them. My dad pulls out this Mickey. We look at each other, and I was like, oh, I think this is happening. So him and Pete kind of negotiated. Mookie and I watched with amazement, and the deal happened.
So, I mean, he did really well, right? Those are some beauties. You know, it was so fun to share my dad with a bunch of my friends and guys that I communicate with all the time, but, you know, he's heard about or he's maybe seen them. He's seen most of their channels and they've seen him on my channel. You know, one day I went out to breakfast with my dad and Darren from Return to Collecting and Mookie Chilson and Mookie's friend Pete. And then the next morning, you know, Darren and I were talking for 6 months saying, it would be really fun if we went out to a meal with our dads and us, right? Well, Darren's dad and his brother Dean were in town. And so we went out for breakfast on Friday morning. Me, my dad, Darren, Dean, and Darren's dad. And that was awesome. It was so fun meeting them. I had talked to Dean on the phone once, but it was just awesome to hang out with them and get to know them. So that was an awesome experience. As a whole, the whole thing is a life memory, 100%. Whether I'm at next year's National or I skip a year, I haven't decided. It'll largely depend on whether or not I go to Strongsville. It's really hard to do both, to go to Strongsville and to go to the National. We'll see what happens. But this one was awesome. I'm thrilled with the purchases. I'm thrilled with the experience. I'm thrilled with the memories. And whenever I go to my next one, whether it be in 2025 or 2026, it will be very difficult to top the National of 2024.